Since humans first set foot on the moon, we have left not just flags and bags of waste there, but also small pieces of art and culture. The Apollo 12 mission, for example, dropped off tiny drawings by artists like Andy Warhol. As humans prepare to return to the lunar surface, a new digital collection of art, poetry, music, films, podcasts and books from 158 countries is being assembled. It's called the Lunar Codex, and it's the creation of physicist and author Dr. Samuel Peralta. He spoke to the BBC's Sarah Montague.
The point of it is to imbue the moon with a sense of what is our heart. Our heart is really the kind of creations we make, our poetry, our music, our films, and so on. The other thing is to inspire the artists here on Earth who are included in the Lunar Codex to keep sustaining their vision and to pass on their vision to others, because you never know when someone will come, tap you on the shoulder and say, your work is good enough, let's go to the moon.
So what size is it?
Well, we're actually leaving something that's about the size of an American quarter. There are little dots on it, and each little dot is the page of a book or the image of an art piece. And what I've done is essentially I've taken the latest in semiconductor technology using the work done by others, and I put it on the work done by others, which is creating lunar landers, put them together, and are launched onto the moon.
It's not likely to be read or decoded by aliens, I presume. So what are you imagining is going to be its purpose beyond the danger that it ends up as just a bit of rubbish on the moon?
Well, my dad is an archaeologist, and he's involved with UNESCO in creating world significant sites. And I imagine a future archaeologist looking at it and opening it up like a time capsule under a building and essentially looking at the slice of life we had in the 20th century, all the arts we did, knowing that despite all the challenges humanity is going through, we still found time to meet and put that meaning into art.
I'm going to ask you to concentrate on your brain. Specifically, what's going on inside it when you look at a painting or a photograph or a building, any work of art, in fact? Well, a gallery and museum tour is just about to get underway here in the UK, and it lets visitors put on a headset and see a real-time 3D computer representation of their brainwaves. Caroline Wyatt got to try it out at the Victoria and Albert Museum here in London.
So we're going to put this headset on you. It's a simple EEG headset. It goes over your ears. I'm Will McNeil, and I'm a creative director at a digital agency called The Mill. And we were brought on to design and develop the technology for this project. It's measuring electromagnetic activity off your brain. And then this application, which we've written, translates it into this 3D animation, which shows a lot of different things about what's going on in your brain as you're looking at art.
You have a screen in the middle, and I'm now wearing this headset. And I'm not looking at the art, I am just looking at my own brainwaves. And I think what is so fascinating about this is that the visualization shows these as beautiful waves that are kind of crashing over each other and into each other. And they kind of flow amazingly.
I'm Jenny Waldman, I'm Director of Art Fund. We were fascinated to find out more about what happens to our brains when we look at art. And what we've found is that art genuinely does inspire our brains to make different connections. So we could really genuinely say that art is beneficial for us. But what's really interesting, post-pandemic, 40% of people are not really going to museums anymore. So this is a way that Art Fund can just remind us all, post-pandemic, we could all get back into museums, and that would be fantastic.
It's the shape and the movement of the waves that's really telling us what's happening in your head right now. So we've identified the pattern in brainwaves that occurs when someone is going through sort of problem solving, trying to understand what they're looking at. And we've turned that into a kind of corkscrewing effect. So the three-dimensional animation starts to kind of wrap around itself and weave. So Caroline's looking at a painting by Degas. It's quite a dark scene, and there's an orchestra in the foreground. But in the background, the actual opera scene is a little bit convoluted, a little bit hard to read.
What I'm trying to figure out in this painting is, am I looking at the orchestra? Am I looking at the audience? Because it's a wonderful painting, but it's not entirely clear.
And we can see some things happening in Caroline's brainwaves here where we're starting to see some corkscrewing. She's trying to kind of understand the scene. Your mind is processing a lot. Your visual cortex is working.
Did you always have an interest in what happens to the brain when people look at art?
I mean, I am a digital artist, so I am always trying to be creative with technology, but I'm also interested in what art does to me, how art makes me feel. I work in a field where I'm often under a lot of pressure to create things quickly and be creative at the same time. It's quite a nice experience for me to go into a gallery and just relax and look at art. Seeing this does actually confirm what I expected, which is that looking at art is not a passive thing. Our brains are very active when we look at art, and we are going through a type of kind of meditation when we look at art, and I think that's really important. People recognize that.
A Dutch art detective, nicknamed the Indiana Jones of the art world, has recovered a painting by Vincent van Gogh which was stolen over 3 years ago from a museum in the Netherlands while it was closed during the COVID pandemic. Arthur Brand worked with the police to negotiate the safe return of the 19th century painting worth millions of dollars whose whereabouts had been a mystery until now. He said it was one of the greatest moments of his life. Paul Moss reports.
It wasn't the most sophisticated crime. The thief used a sledgehammer to smash through the glass doors at the Singer-Laren Museum near Amsterdam and ran off with the painting under his arm. A man known as Niels M. was arrested and subsequently convicted of the theft, but nobody knew where the picture had gone. Until now. Arthur Brand is a self-styled art detective with a track record of recovering missing works. He was contacted by a man who he says wanted to hand over the painting because apparently it was a headache to hold on to. Shortly afterwards, it was delivered to Mr. Brand, covered in bubble wrap, he says, and carried in a blue IKEA bag. He posted a video on social media shortly afterwards.
Stolen 3.5 years ago on Van Gogh's birthday. It's one of the early works by Van Gogh. It's back. It took 1300 days, but here it is, and I will hand it over in a few moments to the museum director.
The museum says Parsonage Garden at Nuenen in Spring will go back on public display next year. But history suggests it won't be the last Van Gogh painting to go missing. 28 have been stolen and then recovered over the past few decades. An unusual but perhaps rather direct form of compliment to the Netherlands' most famous artist.
The woman who appeared in one of the most famous romantic photographs of all time, The Kiss by the Hôtel de Ville in Paris, has died at the age of 93. Françoise Bornet was one half of the young couple seen embracing on the street in a black and white photo from 1950, taken by the photographer Robert Doisneau. The photograph became a huge commercial success in the 1980s, sparking a legal row about copyright. Hugh Schofield reports from Paris.
Everyone assumed that the world-famous photograph of a passionate young couple kissing each other on the mouth as they walked down the street in central Paris must have been spontaneous. Beautifully framed against a backdrop of the Hôtel de Ville, it was a superlative shot, capturing perfectly the permanent romance of the city, even in those drab post-war years. In fact, the photo was staged. So much was apparent after the picture became a massive commercial hit in the 80s, appearing on posters that adorned young people's bedrooms the world over. Such was the fame of the picture that more than one couple, now in their 50s, came forward claiming to be the ones in the shot, and claiming also some recompense for the use of their image. That prompted Françoise Bornet to herself step forward and set the story straight. She and her boyfriend, both drama students, had been approached by Robert Doisneau after he saw them kissing. He said he loved it, and could they do it again? Françoise Bornet recounted the story many times. Here she is in 2005.
He said, "Listen, you are adorable, charming, young. Would you like to kiss one another again in front of my camera?" Of course, we said yes right away. So 3 or 4 days later, we went to the town hall and Doisneau told us to do what we wanted, to kiss one another without taking care of the camera. He said, "Be natural, as you are in the normal life." We didn't need any persuasion, and we kissed one another, and that is how this photograph became as famous.
To prove that her story was true, she produced an original copy of the photo signed by Doisneau himself. He'd been taking pictures to illustrate an article in Life magazine about love in Paris. The shot languished in the archives until it was spotted by a sharp-eyed commercial agent in the early 80s. Françoise Bornet went on to have a career in film and lived a long life. And the boyfriend? Well, it didn't last. For all the passion of the kiss, they split up a short time later.
Hugh Schofield in France.
latest Van
Harry
Gogh
Allen.
show.
And
Not to
finally,
worry.
to a new
Seth
Vincent
Doan
van
will tell
Gogh
us all
exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, where visitors will be able to ask the great artist questions with the help of artificial intelligence.
What is your favourite painting?
It is hard for me to choose a favourite painting among my artworks because each painting is dear to me in its own way. But if I have to choose one, I think my painting called Starry Night is one of my favourites. The painting depicts the village of Saint Remy in southern France with vibrant colours and a swelling sky.
So people can now hear how Van Gogh, who died in 1890, might have answered their questions in a range of languages. The responses are based on a database which came partly from work by Wouter van der Veen, an art historian at the University of Strasbourg and the author of books on Vincent van Gogh. He's been speaking to Misha Hussein.
Primarily, we choose to feed the AI with Van Gogh's correspondence. He wrote about 900 letters, so that's about 1 million words. And that sounds like a lot for a human being, but for the AI, it was quite easy to digest and ingest this large quantity of data.
And do all the letters date from this period? Because this exhibition is specifically about work produced by him in the last 2 months of his life at Auvers-sur-Oise near Paris. Was that a very important period creatively?
Yes, it was his final outburst of an incredible number of high-quality works, really great masterpieces such as the Church of Auvers, the portrait of Dr. Gachet, Wheatfield with Crows were created in a very short time. But of course, when he is in Auvers, it's the very end of his life, and all the books he read, all the people he knows, they are in his head. And my job was to provide the machine with all that information.
Was it all of it, or did you hold anything back?
Well, it was all of it, but still it's fragments. We do not have all the information about Vincent van Gogh. That would not be possible. So it's like our own memories. The history comes to us through fragments that we can remember, and we just connect the dots. And that's what the AI has to do also in an autonomous manner. And that's when you can have some surprises, of course, and you have to train the AI
so when we hear
when
we hear an answer like the one a moment ago saying his favourite painting was Starry Night, do we know that? Is that documented?
No, we don't. It is improvised by the AI. He must have deduced that from the letters and from the information we gave him. We did not guide that.
The AI?
Yes, sometimes he answers that his favourite painting is sunflowers. That makes him quite human also, because it shifts from time to time.
Right.
And I think that if you ask it to anybody, you will have different answers also.
Right, so they are credible then, the answers?
No, no, we should not trust this machine. It is still in infancy. It is only a couple of weeks old, and it's learning. And it's an experimental phase. And what I noticed from the engineers that are working on it, they are like the inventors of air travel. You know, when the first aircraft took off, and even if they crashed after 1 minute, everybody was very happy because it proved that the technology was working.
But even though
and that's where we are now.
Art historian Wouter van der Veen.
Gillot, who had a 10-year relationship with Pablo Picasso, has died at the age of 101. Gillot was already an accomplished painter when she became Picasso's lover in the early 1940s. But her career came under threat when they split up after Picasso told art dealers not to buy her work. However, in subsequent decades, her stature only grew, as our arts correspondent David Slitto explains.
There is a famous photograph of a young Françoise Gillot smiling, walking along a beach with an old man holding a parasol over her. That man was Picasso, 40 years her senior, who was for 10 years her lover, and for decades the shadow that defined her. A film about her life was titled Surviving Picasso.
Aren't you happy with me?
You can't pretend to be the easiest person in the world to get along with.
I'm a perfectly straightforward character with all my cards on the table.
But there are so many cards, and some of them are under the table too.
And when she finally moved on in 1953, he was reported to have said to her, "You imagine people will be interested in you?" Françoise Gillot's father had objected to her painting, preferring she stick to studying law, but she persevered. She had her first exhibition when she was 21, and by the end of her life, her works were on display in more than a dozen of the world's great museums. In 2012, there was a major exhibition of her work, a belated acknowledgement she was far more than a character in a man's life, although she was happy to acknowledge Picasso's artistic influence.
Even if I had not met him, I admire his work, genuinely.
and it would have affected me anyway. So I thought it was more frank just to let it in.
70 years on then, people are more than interested in her and her work. As a young woman, she said, she'd been taught to keep silent. Second place was easier than first. You tell yourself that's all right, she said. But it's not all right.
Our arts correspondent David Litto looking back on the life of French artist Françoise Gillot.
Now to France, and the man they call the Michelangelo of tattooists. Michael de Poissy has made history by becoming the first tattoo artist to win a coveted prize from the Paris Academy of Arts, Science and Literature. David Chazan went to meet him.
Michael de Poissy is an artist first and a tattooist second. And the reason he's been compared to Michelangelo is because he often uses images from medieval stained glass windows to create vivid, luminous tattoos with really intricate details. And his work is so celebrated that people come from all over the world, from as far away as Japan, Australia and Mexico, to get a piece of his art forever etched on their bodies. I spoke to him on the set of a TV show about tattooing, and I asked him what he most loves about tattooing.
For me, it was a fantastic experience because it looks like a wizard, you know?
A magician.
Yes, exactly, a magician.
So for you, it's something magical. It's also something that makes people feel happy.
He feels good when he's arrived. Sometimes he feels no good during the tattoo because it's very painful sometimes. And of course, after the tattoo, it's a great moment. It's an emotional moment because the tattoo is finished.
And David, what makes Michael and his work so popular?
Well, he spent 3 decades honing his craft to create stunning images, often from antiquity. They're pictures of saints, biblical scenes. His customers are often history buffs, teachers or academics who appreciate his attention to detail and, of course, who are prepared to pay thousands of dollars for tattoos that can take months or even years to finish. He told me that for some, the process is akin to therapy.
You can have a very difficult moment in your life. You can lost someone. It looks like a therapy, you know. But I have another kind of customers, like a collector. The people say, okay, I have just 20% of my skin, it's free. I keep this part for you. And when you arrived in my shop, I can recognize this is tattoo artist. This arm, it's a tattoo by a great tattoo artist. It looks like a museum, you know, the collector of the ink.
So that's Michael de Poissy, the Michelangelo of tattoos, doing the job he loves and making people happy. Like one teacher who I spoke to, who had just had a tattoo of a Norse god etched on his back, he said it was like having his own personal masterpiece.
David Chazan in Paris.
Now to an auction house in New York City.
$9,500,000 with Lisa Dennison at $9,500,000. And I'm selling at $9,500,000. Sold.
And that is the moment the gavel came down for a record sale price for a work of art by an African-born artist. It's called Walkers with the Dawn and Morning, a swirling abstract piece by the Ethiopian-American artist Julie Meretu. Will Ross, the BBC's Africa editor, told me more about it and her.
It's quite typical of Julie Meretu's work in that it's a vast piece and she tends to use a phenomenal number of different strokes across the canvas that are layered on top of each other. And if you look back at some of her other pieces of work, they are on a colossal scale. And I've just been seeing one where she was up painting on a canvas and she was using the kind of apparatus you might use on a skyscraper to do some window cleaning, that kind of a sort of cherry picker thing that would be on the outside of a building. So an enormous scale, but she is certainly sort of at the top of the game, as it were, having just broken her own record because just recently she sold a piece for $9.3 million at auction. She was born in Ethiopia back in 1970, but then several years later her family fled due to conflict there and disruption, and has been based in the United States, but also has a gallery in Berlin. But this is a record for something going under the hammer from an artist born in Africa.
Given that she left Ethiopia such a long time ago as a young girl, could this be seen as a victory for African art per se, do you think?
Well, I think there will be a celebration amongst the art community, especially the African art community. I've been speaking to Hannah O'Leary, who's the head of modern and contemporary African art at Sotheby's, the auction house, and she says that while Africa in general is sort of way behind Asia in terms of the value of the art and the interest and the number of sales, it is growing at an extraordinary rate. And there is huge buyer interest in countries like Nigeria, but also it tends to mirror where the economies are strong. So South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt. But she also said there's massive growth now of interest in art from countries like Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia and Zimbabwe, where you could say, economically it's not doing so well.
Now here's a story with a warning for anyone finding old things in the attic. A second-hand dealer in France has won a case to keep more than €4 million from the sale of a rare African mask he found in an elderly French couple's attic. The dealer, who's not been named, was taken to court by the couple who sold him the mask for €150. They wanted the sale stopped, arguing that the dealer must have had prior knowledge of the mask's true value. From Paris, here's Hugh Schofield.
The couple, both in their 80s, were clearing out a house and the dealer took a load of bric-a-brac off their hands for a nominal price. Among the items was a wooden mask, which the couple said had been brought from Africa by an ancestor. The dealer then had the mask valued, was told it was in fact an extremely rare object of which only a few others were known to exist, and at auction last year it went for a monumental €4.2 million. The couple then went to court, saying they'd been defrauded because the dealer must have at least suspected the value of the mask. But the court ruled that no, it was just the dealer's good luck. It was the sellers, the judge said, who were actually at fault because they should themselves have done due diligence and had the mask looked at by experts before they decided to sell.
Next, a farewell to a London institution, the India Club, tucked away inside a hotel on the Strand next to the River Thames. It's been serving up curries, dals and biryani since the early 1950s, a taste of home for South Asian immigrants in the years after independence. But Sunday will be its final service. It's closing to make way for a major refurbishment of the hotel. James Kumarasamy has been down for his first and indeed last visit.
It's a pretty unassuming place, I have to say. There's a chalkboard that says India Club Restaurant and Bar. A couple of gentlemen I've just bumped into who are taking photographs. Tell us why.
This is an iconic place. It has served Indian curry, which we so desperately needed, for all those years, well before any other place opened. So we've come to pay homage to it before it shuts.
This was opened at a time when there was very, very little for Indian community. So it's something quite important. It's a place in history. It has a real place.
We're heading up the stairs. There's a little sign up here that says India Club, why enter the time warp? It's a headline from a magazine and a slightly faded restaurant lettering. We're going to wander up these steps to the restaurant itself. I'm sitting down here now in this packed room with people crammed in on sofas waiting for tables with somebody who has a very close personal relationship with this club. Would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Smita Tharoor. My father lived in London from 1949 to